Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Relaford. I am one of the mental health therapists for employee mental health out of Health and Wellness. And it's really good for you to see all of you all here. And thank you for joining me today. This is the second in a three-part series about supporting mental well-being in the workplace. And today we're going to talk about self-care for supervisors. Just to let you know, the third session of this series will be held on February 10th at noon, and that's going to focus on practical tips for responding to an employee struggling with mental health issues that impact work performance and behaviors, and having that tough conversation with compassion. So hopefully you all will be able to come back and join me for that. And if you were here for the first one we had 2 weeks ago, welcome. And appreciate you all coming back. So, what are we talking about today? Today, we're going to talk about how caring for ourselves as supervisors also make sure that we support mental well-being in the workplace. And, because when we increase your ability as supervisors and managers to manage stress and model, you're also modeling positive self-care strategies in the workplace. And I'm going to say right now, I'm going to probably be using manager and supervisor interchangeably, and regardless of the title, managers and supervisors oversee the work of others. So, because there's such inherent stress in being a leader, regardless of where you land in the management hierarchy, today we're going to focus on developing a self-care plan for you. Okay. So the three major things we're going to talk about today is what is self-care and why is it important? We're going to talk about burnout risk and factors, and we're going to talk about building a self-care plan. So let's get started talking about what self-care is and what self-care is not. So a lot of times people think self-care is selfish. They think it's overindulgence in spending. It might be binge eating your favorite unhealthy foods, participating in activities that give you instant gratification, going on lavish vacations, perfecting yourself at the cost of others, and maybe even numbing bad feelings using alcohol or illicit substances. Like when some people think about talk care, they think that's what the kind of things they think. But self-care is not selfish. There's a difference between selfish with the little s, I always say, and selfish with the big S. And being meaning our own well-being is not self and selfishness is that little s, because sometimes we need to take care of ourselves in order to take care of other people. Taking care of ourselves empowers us to be better friends and partners, co-workers, and humans. So we don't need to be able to have to justify taking care of ourselves. Taking care of ourselves is reason enough, and we don't have to justify it in any way to how it helps others. Um, Self-care is not an excuse as well. Self-care isn't making ourselves feel good by any means necessary either. So don't use self-care as an instrument of selfishness. It's not an excuse for bad or irresponsible behavior. I'm not going to be able to meet that obligation because self-care. You know, it's also not self-care is not self-reliance. Self-care is also acknowledging we can't do it alone. One of the main things you learn when you're really trying to lean into this ideal of self-care is we have to ask for help when we need it, and we can't do it alone. And so opening ourselves up to asking for help and seeking resources, including professional help when necessary. Self-care is also not one size fits all. From day to day, our stress may look very different, so our self-care needs are going to be different. What I need when I'm sad is not the same thing that I need when I'm stressed or angry. What works for you won't always work for me. I really honor the power of meditation. I'm a therapist. We are trained on how to do meditation, and I encourage clients to pursue it as a self-care strategy. But I'm never going to be that person who meditates. My brain doesn't work that way. And I have tried. I have tried so hard, and I end up frustrated. So it's not always easy to tell what you need, no, so because one size does not fit all. I found other ways to get into flow that is not sitting quietly and listening to my very, very busy mind. My mind cannot calm down enough. It needs that distraction of coloring or listening to a book, or doing something that helps my brain do two things at once so that I can concentrate but let those feelings and those thoughts flow through my brain. And self-care is not a cure. So because it's not the solution for every problem. See, but being consistent and intentional with your self-care can help us weather the storms of life. So Self-care is an activity that we do to deliberately to take care of our mental, emotional, and physical health. The main word in that sentence is deliberately, right? It's an intention that we set. We prioritize our own physical and mental well-being. We adopt healthy lifestyle habits that can remain long-term. We practice eating a healthy diet, and I always want to focus on the idea of a practice. This is not perfection, this is practice, it's progress, right? And so eating a healthy diet is consistently. It may not be every day. Some days we might just want that whole, that extra piece of cake, or we just don't want to eat a vegetable. We're just not feeling it. But on a routine basis, do I eat a healthy diet? It's a practice. Finding exercise activities that you enjoy and participating in them regularly, getting an adequate amount of good and quality sleep, following treatment plans for existing conditions accordingly, whether it's a mental health or physical health treatment plan, taking time out for yourself to participate in healthy activities that you enjoy. Because investing in self care makes us more resilient and able to manage adversity more effectively. We also need a community care by an individual that impacts others, changing culture, norms, and policies. When we have that community of care, that idea that we're all in this together, that we can, that we're supporting each other where we're at, that can actually make the stigma of mental health, the stigma of stress and anxiety management, all of those things come down when we all feel like we're in this together. So, what is self care? Why is self care so important? The first reason is because it helps us manage chronic conditions. When we practice those of physical and mental health care strategies, conditions such as depression, diabetes, and heart disease can be more effectively managed. It's also disease prevention. So, it's a chronic condition management, but it's also prevention. Because when we do these self-care strategies, such as regular exercise, healthy eating, and stress management techniques, it actually reduces our risk for heart attack and stroke and obesity in the future. So it's again that practice of prevention. If I do this routinely, it's going to pay off not only right now, but in the future as well. It's also very important for stress reduction. Stress affects all the systems of the body. Chronic stress can lead to chronic health conditions. Practicing self-care that reduces chronic stress can help lower the risk of developing health conditions, again, such as disease, high blood pressure, gastrointestinal disorders, and more. When our stress is high, our window of tolerance for the stress goes down. We can only take so much stress. And so, it's micro stressors of the day, like can't find my shoes, my keys are misplaced, the car doesn't have gas, I have to stop on my way. All those micro stressors that come along, then you add the major stressors of like maybe there's a conflict at work that you're dealing with, or a major project deadline, or maybe there's conflict at home. All those major stressors kind of layer on top of each other. And so that window of ability to tolerate stress gets smaller and smaller while we try to shove more and more things through that window. So, what self care does is it opens up our window of tolerance. It gives us that ability to tolerate more stress, and it also helps us to reduce stress overall as well. It can lead to healthier relationships because when we're taking care of our own needs, we are better able to engage in healthy relationship, partially due to increased self-esteem and self-worth. When I feel better about myself, I feel more engaged. I'm not playing that shame and blame thing in my head, so I can be more present with the people that I love. It helps improve job satisfaction. A study of nurses found those who implemented intentional self-care practices had a significantly higher job satisfaction. That author also suggests implementing self-care practices could improve job satisfaction and teamwork while reducing burnout. So again, that idea of like when I take care of myself, nurses, social worker, helping professions, in camp versus campus or healthcare, either one, we are in some form of healthy professions, and we are our tools, right? And so when we are not taking care of ourselves, we actually can't meet the needs of the people we're here to serve, but we also don't have the capacity to also have a life outside of work. We need to continuously build up that stress tolerance through self-care. It also reduces burnout. There's been multiple studies that have looked at burnout, and the solution for burnout is very complex, but self-care strategies are one of several components that can be effective. And then overall, it just improves our quality quality of life. When self-care helps to better manage health conditions, it reduces stress, it's a greater sense of belonging, and overall well-being and quality of life improves. As we go along, if you all want to put ideas that you have about self-care or practices, like when we talk about the specific types of practices too, tricks and tips that you want to share with the other folks here, please feel free to type those out into the chat box because I think we learn from each other as much as we learn from listening to me. So I would really encourage you all to do that. Okay. So let's talk about the difference between, let's talk about illness and ill-being. So if you're talking about wellness and well-being, which we talked about in the first session, what leads to burnout is actually illness and ill-being because reviewing some of these issues, like what causes burnout, diminishing trust, increasing workloads, continuous crisis mode, diminishing resources, current recurrent disruptions, and social injustice issues. Then how does that affect specifically burnout affect managers? It leads to exhaustion. It can lead to dreading coming to work. It might decrease our ability to be compassionate or responsive. It makes it difficult to regulate our own emotions. Sometimes makes us more obsessive in our thinking. Our motivation goes down and we stop feeling like ourselves. But it's also the cycle. Right. So it's like burnout causes, burnout effects causes, burnout effects. It can be a vicious cycle. So keeping that in mind, what do we do to try to avoid this ideal burnout? So before we do that, I click too fast. Let's talk about a few more risk factors for burnout. These are general for anybody. Work and home conflicts, perceived ineffectiveness in doing one's job. It's important for us to get, even if it's just a little bit of feedback or to ask for feedback when we need it to understand, to feel like, are we really ineffective? Are we actually doing our job well? Sometimes we need to check in and get that. Younger professionals, and women professionals are more at risk of burnout than anyone else. That pressure of trying to like figure out who they are as professionals, women professionals in the workforce, having multiple different stress issues that come along with still being the primary caregiver in a lot of relationships. Time with unmeaningful work. So putting work in and doing a lot of work that feels unmeaningful, like not doing things that make you feel like you're being productive or that what you're doing is important. Parenting young children can be a risk for burnout. Personal histories of trauma and anxiety and mood disorders. Again, talked about layering on those stressors. Unmet emotional, physical, and social safety needs, an unsupportive work environment, high workloads, long work hours, inefficient work processes, lack of input or control with respect to issues affecting their work lives, highly critical and low empathy supervisors and leaders, conflict with coworkers, limited advancement opportunities, and being on call nights and weekends. So when you look at this list, do you think, yep, some of these are happening to me right now, or they've happened to me in previous jobs, and really did impact my sense of well-being and wellness, and how I was able to manage that job? Did it lead to burnout, or do you feel crispy right now? Because all of these things, or any of these things, could be happening in our jobs, particularly right now. I mean, we tend to be short-staffed, asked to do more with less. We have an there's a lot of uncertainty right now in our work. So, right now, burnout can be a really big challenge for everybody. So specifically, let's talk about risk factors for manager burnout. Dual role of doing the work and managing. So, those hybrid supervision roles, right? Where you're actually doing the work, plus you're managing people who are doing the same work that you're doing. So you're always in that dual mindset of maybe if you're a therapist who also supervises other therapists, you're always in that dual mindset of managing and overseeing other folks' work while still trying to meet the needs of your clients, and that switching hat to hat. It's doable, but it can definitely lead to burnout if you're not managing it well. It's also dual role of doing your work and managing when you're not doing direct practice, but you're just doing the work of managing, right? You may have reports that you need to do. You might have meetings you need to attend. Plus you're trying to manage the workload. So these dual roles come in any shape and form. Too many distractions, lots of things going on, putting out fires. What's the next crisis today that's going to take me away from my to-do list? And the nature of managers' roles have changed over time. Once upon a time, a manager's job was simply to delegate tasks to members of their team. And also that's still part of that. Every manager's role has changed in the 21st centuries. We're not just expected to manage, we're expected to be leaders. We have to lead our team with empathy and understanding. We're often asked to act as caring mentors more than a boss. It's a lot easier to feel overextended when managers give more of their time and attention to their employees more than ever. Maybe you're new to being a manager and you're still figuring out what that means, particularly with the idea of like maybe if you were hired from within and now you're supervising your peers, that can be a really hard transition, particularly setting those boundaries and wanting to maintain those friendships, but also knowing that your roles have changed. It's really exciting to get a new job, but sometimes when that excitement wears off, it can become really overwhelming and it quickly turns into that burnout. Um, being a new manager comes with its own stressors. Lack of support. Um, we all struggle with that sometimes, but so can it, but whether we're new managers or experiencing managers, it can be difficult sometimes to know what to focus on because we have so many competing priorities. If you're, it's easy to wonder if you're doing a good job because you feel like you're dropping balls all the time, right? So, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but there's only so much of you. There's a finite amount of time and energy that you have in a given day to do certain tasks. But when you have multiple priorities and trying to figure out which one is the priority, you find yourself you find yourself letting things drop off, and then you feel bad about that, and then you're trying to catch up, and there just feels like you don't feel like you're doing a good job. And then managing remote and hybrid teams bring those challenges as well. You know, hybrid work and remote work has changed the game for a lot of people. It's allowed a lot of people in the workforce who may not have been able to do so if they had to come into the office. It's also allowed for flexibility, which one is one of the main things that's employees say that's important to them in a job. It's giving us a lot of those really helpful things, but it also means difference of how do we manage? How do we find out, make sure that the work is getting done? What do we focus on? What's the time management issues that we might be dealing with? And so figuring that out can also be really difficult at times. So here's some risk factors for manager burnout as well. This comes with this is around stress and boundary issues. Doing work for others. Doing tasks alone that are intended for more than one person. I'll just take care of that. That's fine. Go ahead, do that thing. I'll take care of this. I'll do this, Oh no, no, it'd be too hard to tell you how to help me. I'm just gonna do it, right? We do that, like we just push people off, even when they're offering to help us. Saying yes to tasks you cannot responsibly complete. We just say yes, yes, yes to everything that's asked for us. And then there's so many things on our plate that when we say yes to one thing, we end up saying no to something else. Taking on more than you can handle. Working during downtime, like not having those really good boundaries between work and home. And I'm not talking about clocking out at 5 o'clock. I'm talking about like knowing that this is the ritual that you have that transitions you from work to home. How do you make sure that when you're present at work, you're present at work, and when you're at home, you're present at home? If you're hourly, working without pay just to get the work done, feeling like you're failing to delegate. Delegating as a supervisor and manager is the magic thing, but it's also, one of those things that we fail to delegate, but also delegate responsibly, like finding out who has the skills and the talents to do the thing we're trying to delegate, but also not to put all of our things on the one person who always says yes, because that's, it's a supervisor thing. You know the people on your team who are going to say yes. You just know. And so it's really easy to kind of do those go-tos as well. Failing to take advantage of vacation days. We need that break. We need that reset. We need that time off. Making sure that you take, your time off during the week. Work is work, time, home, and home. Maybe, some risk factors are people, flirting and gossiping and being asked about personal issues unrelated to work. These are all things that kind of distract us and can lead to burnout as well. So, what do we do about this? How do we manage this as supervisors? What do we do in order to manage that self-care? So, why is self-care so hard when we are stressed? Because that's not the time to figure out your self-care plan. When you're in the middle of a freak out or you're feeling your anxiety go up, that's not the time to go, I wonder what would be a really good self-care activity right now, right? Because our brains are in that fight or flight mode, and we are so narrowed. We just narrowed on that survival. We don't see we have any options about doing things different. So it's really important to go into any day with a good self-care plan. So you know that you have that go-to. So you don't have to think about it in the moment. You can just go, oh, I remember I put this list of things in my phone that I'm going to do when I'm feeling stressed and going to that. We're also so busy trying to solve problems that we're stuck in that doing mode, trying to get more and more done. And when switching to being mode might be exactly what we need. 15 minutes of a break where you can have quiet in your brain or do something that's just not about work actually allows your brain to have a reset and just come back to the work. That's why it's important to get up, walk around, step up, go get the fresh drink, come back to your office, especially when you have a lot of when you have a lot of stress or things going on. I am really, really good now, but have been really bad in the past on responding to emails too quickly, right? Because we're trying to get it done. So we're pulling those emails in and we're like, here's another thing I can't believe this. They're putting this on me now too. And now we're like responding to the email instead of really thinking about how we want to respond to it or how we want to go about it. So actually walking away and coming back, those are things we can do to keep us in that being mode. We sometimes need to say, okay, I can't do this right now. I need to go take a breath. We may not have a go-to list of self-care activities, which I just mentioned. It's difficult to think of options in those moments of high stress. So having that list on hand can really help. It doesn't work, you can always switch to another one. That's why I say one size doesn't fit all. And we're going to talk about how to determine what kind of self-care activities might work best for you. But I do think that having that go-to list, because it's really hard in that moment to remember what to do. But if you look at your list, put it on a post-it on your computer if you're a person that's desk bound. If you're somebody who is walking around and doing things all day long, put it in your phone so that you can get to that very quickly when you're feeling that stress. So we're going to be talking about strategies, and I hope that as we go along, you all will think about those that might work for you and jot those down and figure out a place that you could put them, that you can come back to them when you're ready for them. So radical self-care is important. Rest is important. Radical rest, right? It is revolutionary to actually value rest because our society says work, 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 pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. There's no time for that. Rest is laziness. And so radical self-care is that the difference between self-indulgence and self-protection. It embraces practices that keeps us both physically and psychologically healthy and fit, making time to reflect on what matters to us. It helps us grow and it makes sure we check in on ourselves to ensure that we're doing aligns with what matters to us. Because a lot of times we're just running around and we're human doings instead of human beings, and we're not really sure about why we're doing what we're doing. So checking in, does this align? Is this something that deserves my time? Or is this something I can put on the back burner and come back to? Or is this not a me problem to solve? Is this a you problem to solve, right? We're always feeling like we have to you're trying to get everything done. And sometimes it's not something for us to solve because as managers and supervisors, we think all the problems are for us to solve. So there are dimensions to self-care. If you've been in one of our other trainings, you've probably seen a version of this. And this will be, I always send the PDF out after these trainings. And I'm actually probably going to send them all out to everybody who signed up for all three trainings. So you'll get these in about 2 weeks with a link to the presentation recording as well, because I want you to have this. But this dimension of self-care is a way of thinking about, what do I need? Do I need mind? Do I need body? Do I need relationship self-care? Do I need spirit self-care? Because these are the dimensions. So body is things like touch and movement and sleep and nutrition. And mind is things like being aware and being mindful, but using self-compassion. Why am I saying such negative things to myself in my head? Would I ever say that to my friend? Why would I say it to myself? Setting goals and asking yourself, is this aligned with my goals? Is what I'm doing, I have purpose towards that? It's also about spirit, connection to something bigger than ourselves, living authentically, being curious, being creative, making meaning, and then having those rituals or practice that reinforce that connection. Spirituality is not religion. Spirituality may be practiced through a religious faith or a faith belief, but it's bigger than that. It is that idea of like connection to bigger things. Relationship boundaries, and we're going to talk relationship self-care, and we're going to talk about boundaries more, but it also includes things like communication, addressing conflict, investing in connections, building new relationships. So and when you see the asterisk, that's another place where may want to come back and explore these ideas on your own, or jot them down, these ideas. But definitely you'll get it as a PDF as well. Let's talk more about boundaries. So just take a minute and ask yourself these questions. If you are able to say yes to any of these, you may need to revisit your boundaries. Feeling overwhelmed or burned out, resentment towards others, avoiding calls or interactions with those you think might ask for something. Maybe you're asking yourself, you notice yourself commenting on how you've helped others but got nothing in return. Do you daydream about dropping everything and disappearing? Do you lack sufficient time for yourself? Being a manager and supervisor is all about relationships, and relationships need clarity. Lack of boundaries leads to both employee and managers feeling overworked, misunderstood. It leads to poor communication and resentment towards our work and our coworkers. Strong leaders have clear boundaries. Setting and maintaining boundaries as a supervisor are important to maintaining healthy work-life balance and ensuring that all your team members are clear of the expectations and responsibilities. Some boundaries are internal. There are things like, I'm going to make sure that I leave time at the end of the day to set aside and really think about what I actually accomplished today, not just what I need to do tomorrow. That I know that I have a good idea of what I need to where I need to start in the morning, and then I can kind of put a pin in the end of the day. It's finding those ways to to model what it means to have good boundaries for your coworker, for your team. Um, when you don't have boundaries, you're more susceptible to being pulled and pushed in different directions, doing what other people the other wants and needs instead of focusing on your own, not getting your own work done because you're focused on other folks' work. And rather than making the right decisions for the team, you're just focused on getting it done. Boundaries are best can be described as the limits you set on your time, space, and energy to protect your emotional health and well-being. Time, space, and energy. Those are the three areas where boundaries are important. Remember that setting and maintaining boundaries aren't just about practice protecting your personal time and well-being, but also about being more effective and productive leader. By respecting your own boundaries and encouraging others to do the same, they're going to create a more positive and healthy work environment for everyone involved. Let's talk about how you might set boundaries as a supervisor. We're going to talk about clearly defining your boundaries first. Start by identifying what your personal boundaries are, such as how much time you're willing to commit to work, what kind of work you're willing to assume. Spell out your boundaries and share them with your team so everyone is on the same page. Communicate your boundaries. Make sure everyone on your team knows your boundaries and why they are important to you. This will help your team understand your perspective and respect your limits. Enforce your boundaries. It's important to stick to your boundaries and say no to requests or tasks that go beyond them. If you consistently go beyond your boundaries, you're going to risk that burnout and you're going to resent your work. Encourage others to set boundaries. As a leader, you can encourage others on your team to set their boundaries by leading by example and creating a culture where boundaries are respected and valued. And then revisit those boundaries regularly. Boundaries change, they're fluid depending on the need and the time. What goes back to, again, why are we doing these boundaries, and if that in that as your time changes or if your energy changes, you may have to revisit some of those boundaries and review them routinely. Sometimes we have to reset them because, it's our boundary, so it's our responsibility to maintain it, not the person that we are trying to set a boundary with. Let's talk about this use of no. Um, no is a complete sentence all by itself, but we are so bad at it, particularly women. We're not really socialized to say no. We're supposed to be saying yes, right? But every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So how do you use no? How do you decide what you're not going to be able to do? What do you have to eliminate? What do you need to delegate? So these are ways to say no. Delegate it, eliminate it, can it wait, prioritizing, determine what is important to you and what do you value, and if you take on something new, what are you going to stop doing? And so sometimes that idea of like saying no is, how do we really do that? What are we doing? Let's really look and be intentional about the work that we do. A lot of times we have preferences over requirements in the way we do our work, and maybe our preferences that we're holding on to no longer work because the expectations and the requirements have changed. So we may need to eliminate our practice of, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of a good example. Oh, when I was doing community-based work and being a supervisor, I really like to spend time getting ready for a site visit. I would look at all their caseloads. I would make notes on those caseloads, be prepared to talk about it. That felt important to me. But what happened was I got more people that I had to supervise. And so the time to do that was no longer there. So I had to eliminate that preference and really streamline and think, what do I really need to do to prepare for this site visit? Also, asking yourself, can it wait? A lot of times, all your priorities feel like an urgency. There's a sense of this, everything's an urgency. Well, everything can't be an urgency. So that's when you step back and prioritize and decide, this is the thing right here. These things have to wait. And sometimes it really can wait. It just feels like it's going to stay on your to-do list, and that makes you feel uncomfortable because you really just want your to-do list. And also sometimes it's low-hanging fruit, and boy, does it feel good to knock something off your list. But we're also sometimes using that busy work kinds of things to avoid the bigger things that feel too big at the moment. So asking yourself, is this something that's a requirement? Can it wait? What is it a priority? And then again, what do you value? What's important to you? I'm a social worker. I value relationships. So as a supervisor, that also meant I valued the relationships with my staff. So, am I doing all of this like prep work and running reports when really my important thing was to make sure my staff felt supported and that they knew, what the expectations of their work, but they also knew that I valued the work that they did. And then that idea of taking on something new, what are you going to stop doing? And I'll say it's a kind of an old book now because I'm also an old social worker, so I read it a long, long time ago. But it's a book called Getting to Yes. But the idea, and one of the things that really that really stuck with me about that book was the idea that people want you to say yes. They do. We don't want to say no to people. It's uncomfortable. But sometimes that idea of saying yes, but is a really good way to go. Yes, I can see how this is a really important thing that you want me to do, boss. However, here are the other three things that are a priority right now. If I take this on, which of these three things would you like me to put on the back burner? Asking them to help you to prioritize, making it clear that taking this on is also saying no to something else. Saying that to yourself too. Ooh, I'd really like to be on that committee. That's really important to me. It aligns with my values. Do I have the time and the energy to put into it right now? Is this something, and if I do sign up for this, what is something else that I can put up to the side while I'm working on it? So, what's important to you, making sure that you're balancing with what you say yes, what are you saying no to? Okay, let's talk about some specific ways to generate some self-care ideas. So, I want you to take a moment and think about body, mind, relationships, and spirit. So, really quickly, just the first things that come onto your mind, ways I typically care of my body. What's some ways you typically take care of your body? Do you go to the doctor? Do you take vitamins? Do you make sure that you eat something before you come to work in the morning? Do you try to get some active movement through the day? What are some ways you typically care of your body right now? And then think of one additional way, something that maybe you thought, I really need to start doing this that I'd like to take care of for my body. Make it concrete and specific though. So not like, I'd like to start exercising. I'd like to increase my movement 30 minutes a week. That's more specific. Okay. Then go on to mind. What ways do you tend to take care of your mental needs? How do you keep yourself challenged but also give your brain rest? What's one additional way you'd like to keep care of your mind? Go ahead and do that the same with relationships. How do I invest in and care for my relationships? What's one way I'd like to nurture my relationships? And then the same with spiritual self. How it's one way you'd like to nourish my spirit. How am I going to cultivate curiosity? What's something that I want to learn a little bit more about that I can do? Maybe I like learn a new skill, but I only do it 20 minutes a week. Because sometimes I think we think we're going to have to carve out this giant amount of time and make it our whole focus. But it's like sometimes it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so finding time to do small things, even if it's a small craft that takes 15 or 20 minutes to do, your brain's going to be happy because it's not only mind, but it's also spirit. It's also going to allow that spirit to connect to like creativity and curiosity and learning a new skill. So all of those things don't have to be something that you just find multiple hours of time in a week to do. It can be small steps, small bites. All right. This is my favorite book right now. My good friend and coworker, Rhonda Henry, told me about it. I love this book because unlike what I just did, trying to sell you self-care, it doesn't do that. It just says self-care, duh, we need self-care. But what it does do, and I really like, is it has A to Z different ways to practice self-care because we don't really, sometimes we don't have really good ideas about what self-care would look like for us. So it gives you all sorts of options about ways to ask for help, burning negative thoughts, getting in touch, things, there's so many choices in there, A to Z. So there, I really like this book. But what I really love about this book is this right here. In the back of the book, it actually helps you figure out what care do you need right now. Because again, all self-care doesn't fit. One tool is not going to work for just any time. So this says, how do you feel right now? Like a pile of garbage. Okay, I'm sorry. How much effort do you think you can put into that right now? As little as humanly possible, it's one of those days. Ask for help. Do the bare minimum. Sometimes we just have to get it done. We don't have to do it all. You know, put on a fresh change of clothes, drink a glass of water. Did you take your medication? As little as humanly possible. Tell myself that I've got this. Do some self-compassion. Say, it may not feel like I've got it right now. This is not this, this feels like I'm not doing well with this, but I am doing the best I can in this situation, and tomorrow I will do better. Or maybe you have a little bit more energy, so you could take a bath or get something to eat or play a game with your kid. So this is the way you can kind of think about ways to practice self-care that you may not have even thought of as self-care, but also very much targets how you're feeling. Um, I will include this is the slide because I will tell you this book is free on Kindle Unlimited, which is awesome. But if you're like me, like sometimes it's really tiny when it's with something like a two-pager that they put like as an addendum to the Kindle. So I actually blew this up so that I could see it, and so this slide will be part of your PDF, the slides, and so you'll be able to see that, even though you'll be able to see it in the book as well. But for those of us who like to really see it in their face, Here's a bigger version of that. So that's one of the things I really like about this book. So again, like here's an example. How do I feel? I'm okay. I can enjoy just doing something productive, or I'd like to relax or have fun. So that you kind of really ask yourself, check in, what do I need? Maybe I have lots of emotions and I need a distraction. So maybe I call my friend and ask them to tell me a joke or to talk about something that's going on in their life so that I'm not focused right now on what this whatever this cluster is today, right? Sometimes we just need that distraction, but also a connection. I feel really awful. Maybe I can just do a little bit more. Oops, sorry. And this is just a bigger example of what I was just talking about. So how are you feeling? I'm okay. Maybe I could do something productive. Let's look at where I am with my goals, or let's write down a couple of ideas about things I'd like to make sure I do this year. So I don't know about you all, but I loathe and love making New Year's resolutions because like sometimes I've gotten better at it over the years, but still kind of sometimes pie in the sky. And so, what were your ideas? What were your New Year's resolutions this year, and where am I at? We're at the end of January. Let's do a little audit, right? Uh, I'm working on radical acceptance. It's going. I'm getting there. It's the third year, but I'm practicing it. And the other thing that I really want to do that I have not done in 4 years is I really want to do paint your pet at painting with a twist. And every month I look to see what day it is of the month, and I'm like, oh, I can't do it that day. Or, but my goal this year is to put it on the calendar and make myself go and pay for it. Because if I pay for it, I'll go. Because I've done this for all of my cats, but one of them, I didn't like the way it came out, so I want to repaint her picture. So, these are things that we can get audit. That's my creativity. That's something that's important to me. And it's also something that now has become kind of like an ick because I'm like, oh, you didn't do it again this year. When are you going to do that? Right. And so thinking about that goal audit and what your ideas are is a good way to like check in with yourself. Okay. Stress and overwhelm, declutter. Our brains love a clean closet. Have you all ever cleaned out your closet and then you're like standing in front of it and you're like, "Whoa," because that closet looks so awesome and our brains are like, yes, this is so great. It doesn't have to be a whole closet. Maybe clean out the drawer in your desk. Or sometimes when I just need a reframe of my brain, maybe I've had a lot of clients back to back and I haven't really had time to decompress in between sessions and my brain is just like, it is feeling stuck. I might move the stuff on the right side of my desk to the left side of the desk, the stuff on my left side to the right side, because then my brain's like, what's different here? And it gives it something, a little bit of a distraction, something else to focus on, and it helps to calm me down. So there might be some ideas that you have as well around that. When I need to relax, what do I do? You know, I like cooking, but it's also something it's my job. When we break up things in our household, I'm the cook. And so, sometimes it really feels like a task and not a joy. So I make sure that at least once a week I cook a new recipe or a recipe I really like that I look forward to jumping in there and trying because then it refreshes that task for me because it does help me relax and it does ground me. Again, I don't meditate, but I can take a walk in nature and pay attention to I do a lot of grounding. Grounding is anything that brings you back into your body. So pay attention to what it feels like when the wind's hitting my face. I might pay attention to how the temperature is. I might look around and see all of the different colors that I don't get to see inside my house or inside my office. I can do those kinds of things to ground when I need to relax. Okay. So, again, all these different ways that you can manage your emotions, it's not one size fits all. And I want you all, that's the take home message. Figure out a plan, figure out a backup, put it in your phone. So, staying on track when we're thinking about overcoming barriers to self care, the necessity of a plan B. Again, like one size doesn't fit all. And if your go-to self-care is massage, well, guess what happened to me last year? My massage therapist, I go every other week, and it is part of my budget and my allowance to do this, but I go every other week religiously. It is part of my self-care. It's like one of the pillars of my self-care plan. However, last year, my massage therapist broke her wrist and was out for 8 weeks. And I felt really bad for her, and I had lots of compassion for her, and I did nurture that relationship while she was out by checking on her. However, I felt really bad about myself too, because it was one of the things I did for myself. So I had to come up with a plan B, and some of that plan B was finding an alternative massage therapist. I went to Lexington Healing Arts. The students there are great. They're really practicing their skills. It's a great way to get a massage. So I did that. But I also did other things, like if massage is about like chronic pain management also, but it's also about that physical touch piece of it, then what are some other ways I can do that? So I got myself one of those little foot baths, and I put my feet in it, and I let myself just feel that heat on my feet and the relaxing bubbles. I made sure that reinforced hugging in my house when we see each other for the first time in the day. So there's always that need for that plan B, because things disrupt us time and day, sometimes various time increments, work days versus weekends, overcoming those limitations. How do you overcome those limitations and have that plan B for staying on track with your self-care? So, thinking about this, what is a common barrier you face when attempting self-care? And what would you say to yourself when this comes up again? One of the ways I've kind of slowed my own roll when it comes to barriers to self-care is I've made self-care a priority. So, and many of you all probably heard this analogy, but we talk about how everything in our life needs to fit in this big glass jar, and that our priorities are the big rocks that we need to put in the jar, and then our just day-to-day minutia like is the sand and the little rocks and I need to stop and get milk, and I need to do this and I need to do that, the minutia of life, right? And so when you think about how to fit everything that you have to do, including your big rock priorities, into that jar, if you put the sand and you put the little rocks in first, those big rocks are not going to fit. But when I put my priorities, those things that include self-care or making sure that I have time with friends, or that I prioritize, making sure my husband and I download and talk to each other when we get home. Both have, we want to make sure that we have that time of reconnection. If those are my big rocks, I'm going to put those in first. And then I'm going to put the little rocks and the sand in, and I'm going to be able to shake that in. And it's all going to fit in that jar because it's going to shake around my priorities. But I have to make sure that I go back and I say, this is a priority. I need to do this thing first. Okay. So we've talked about this. Identify things you already do that you'd like to continue. And maybe there's some things that you would like to do, but they've fallen off your radar. Put those back on the list. Start very, very small. Like I said, this is not something that building a new self-care plan for yourself or developing a priority of self-care. It is not something that you can do because if you think that you're going to be able to like block off large portions of time to do it, you're already too busy. This is asking you to do something else. So what you're doing is you're renegotiating your time, and you do small doses and build up the momentum. Momentum builds motivation. So give yourself something and make yourself something to feel proud of. So if you start very, very small and you actually do the thing, you're going to be like, I did the thing. And so now you're willing to do the next thing because it felt good to do the first thing. Review your notes as you talked about what we've gone through today, and identify 2 to 3 things you'd like to try. Notice any areas that are especially difficult to generate ideas. Go back to these lists when you get the PDF. Think about those. Think about looking at that book if you have Kindle Unlimited. Consider an accountability partner, a friend, a health coach, a therapist. You don't have to be working on, you and your friend may not even have the same goal that you're working on. You might just each have a goal, and you check in on each other and make sure that you're, holding each other accountable. Because I'm much more likely to do something if somebody's going to ask me about it than if nobody even knows I'm trying to do it. Consider habit stacking. This is a really good thing to do, even if like this is one of my main go-tos when I'm helping folks with ADHD think about strategies, because habit stacking is a really great way to start to keep doing something. So, for example, if I was wanting to start practicing deep breathing on a daily basis, I'm setting an intention. I'm going to do deep breathing. If I decided I was going to do deep breathing and I was going to set aside this time to sit in the middle of my bed and to really close my eyes and take those deep breaths, I think, wow, that feels really good, and I really want to do that. And then I'm gonna be like, I don't have time for that. But what I can do is I can habit stack. So all of us have routines throughout our day. For example, I get up in the morning and I go in and I pull my retainers out because yes, I'm in my 50s wearing retainers, and I brush my teeth. And if I'm not washing my hair that day, I wash my face, right? I do the routine. So what I do after I brush my teeth and I wash my face is that I take two really good cleansing breaths. I go, hold at the bottom. I feel my shoulders. Sounds like letting go of the tension and ready for the day. And I do that two or three times, and then I hop in the shower because I'm stacking it with other things I'm already doing habitually. It makes it easier for me to keep up with it. Keep a reminder list or a photo on your phone. Use written or visual reminders, and I'm going to show you some examples of that right now. But things that like keep you on target, right? Like, if it's in the back of your mind and there's nothing that's going to remind you of it, it's hard to keep up with that, especially for busy people. We're all busy people. Here's some examples of things you can do. You can maybe you make a work, and some of these were made during COVID, but you could see, what can I do that takes 5 minutes? What can I do that takes 15 minutes? What are some 30-minute activities I can do? So I might, write these out in my journals that I can go back to them. But my journal's at home, so I'm going to take a picture of it because I always have my phone, right? So then you can go back to that. I got 5 minutes and I need something. What can I do in this 5 minutes for self-care? Making those work and life balances. You only enter grades one day a week. I use my out of office email notification after 5. I will not do work on Fridays or Saturday evenings. I might do extra work on Sunday to catch up, or but I'm not going to do that on Friday or Saturday evenings. Those are things I'm going to keep as sacred, and I'm going to stop work by 9 p.m. during the work week, no matter what. And your work life boundaries will look different depending on your other obligations as well. So these are some examples of how we keep these up in our mind and refreshing. Okay, so we talked about this, about how do we know our staff needs help, but how do we know we need help as well? When it's very intense, are you having discomfort or symptoms that seem intolerable? Maybe you need to ask for help. Do the symptoms linger longer? Like it could be, if we're talking about for mental health issues, we're talking about depression or anxiety or just severe stress that is now causing like, stomach aches or panic attacks or difficulty breathing. Is it becoming more intense? Is it lasting longer? Does your worries get in the way? Are things triggering you more? Because I have all these micro stressors and bigger stressors all layered on top of themselves. Do I feel triggered all the time and do I feel irritable? How does it affect your overall life? Would your life be significantly different if you were to address this anxiety and depression? If you can answer yes to these things, you might want to ask for help. There are lots of supports for ourselves and our staff, and here are some of them. I shared these last time as well. These are things that are part of our benefits package, but are also part of the UK community. One that I've been really focusing on is the UK Empath Clinic as a crisis support. A lot of times when one of our staff are in a mental health crisis, we don't know what to do. And so the Empath Clinic is a 24/7 operation. They are an emergency psychiatric. They do assessment, they do treatment, they offer help. Somebody can go there, they can call there, they can get services through there. It is a very open and welcoming, and it doesn't require somebody to just go to the emergency room and be another number. And psychiatric emergencies tend to clog our emergency rooms. And this is a way for, at least at UK, we have a very specific clinic for that. So that will actually is a live link that will take you to that, but you can also look it up if you want more information on it. Also, a reminder that you are receive as an employee, you can receive up to 5 confidential free sessions each year. Those are for your employees, sponsored dependents, and retirees. It is individual counseling that can happen in person or in telehealth format. You can go to the Health and Wellbeing website to make an appointment. Or if you also need help or if you need more assistance, you can also call the number here. That number is answered Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Those 5 free sessions are for you to use any way you like. And I, really encourage folks to use them. It's a great benefit. This is the four of us that are your primary team. What a motley crew that we make. But so we're, and then we also have a couple of contract therapists who have specialties that we also refer to as well that are part of those 5 free sessions. Okay. And any questions or thoughts before we end today? Anything you would like to add? Oh, you guys put some great options in here. So make sure you all look if you didn't slide through the chat, you might look because the journaling, reading a book, uh, one person is using a journaling app. That's awesome. Um, Somebody asked what the app is. So if Marianne's still here, if you'd share that with everybody. Um, Kinder World is a personal favorite. So see, these are all some really awesome ideas that we can take advantage of that we don't often think about. Any questions? Any thoughts? Okay. So thank you all so much for joining me today. I appreciate your time. I know that you could have been doing a lot of things with your lunch hour, but sharing with me was very much appreciated. And I'll get this stuff out to you after February 10th. Have a great week, you all. Take care of yourselves. Thank you.